Most men won't become rich, not because they're lazy, not because they're stupid, but because they're trapped inside a system they don't even realize they're in. And by the time they finally see it clearly, it's already too late. This isn't about motivation. It's not about waking up earlier or grinding harder. It's about understanding the game you're playing and why most men are losing it. From the moment you're born, the path is already laid out for you. Go to school, get decent grades, go to college, pick something practical, get a job, work your way up. On the surface, it sounds logical. It sounds safe. It sounds like the responsible thing to do. And while for a while it works, you follow the path, you do what you're supposed to do, you check the boxes, and eventually you get your first real paycheck. That moment feels like progress, like you're finally moving forward. But what no one tells you is what you've already actually signed up for. Because underneath all of it, you've been trained to do one thing extremely well. Trade your time for money, hour by hour, day by day, year by year. And that trade is where the trap begins. At first, it doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like independence. You start making money. Maybe you move out. Maybe you upgrade your lifestyle a little. You get your own place. You buy things you couldn't afford before. You start building a life that looks decent. But slowly, almost invisibly, something starts to shift. Your expenses begin to rise. Not dramatically at first, just enough to feel normal. Rent, utilities, groceries, gas, subscriptions, car payments, insurance. Little by little, your income increases, but your lifestyle increases with it. And before you even realize what's happening, you're no longer building freedom, you're maintaining survival. This is the point where the system tightens its grip, because now you can't stop. You can't just walk away, because if you stop working, everything you've built starts to collapse. The bills don't stop. The rent doesn't stop. The obligations don't stop. So you keep going, day after day, week after week, year after year. You wake up, you go to work, you come home, you recover just enough to do it again. And from the outside, it looks like stability, but internally, it feels different. It feels like you're stuck in a loop. And this is where most men spend the majority of their lives. Not because they lack ambition, not because they don't want more, but because they're locked in a system that rewards consistency, but quietly punishes escape. Because the moment you step outside of it, you take on risk. And risk becomes harder to justify the deeper you go. At some point, usually in your late 20s, maybe early 30s, you start to feel it. It's subtle at first, a thought in the back of your mind, a question you can't quite ignore. Is this really it? You look ahead, and the future doesn't feel exciting. It just feels predictable. More work, more bills, more responsibilities. You realize that the promotions don't change much. The raises don't really move the needle. Because even as you grow your income, the system adjusts with you. And suddenly you understand something most people never say out loud. This path doesn't lead to freedom. It leads to maintenance. And that realization hits hard. Because now you're aware. But awareness doesn't automatically create options. In fact, it often creates tension. Because you start seeing the system for what it is. But you're still inside of it. You still have responsibilities. You still have commitments. And now, risk feels heavier than it did before. So why don't most men leave? Why don't they just change direction, build something different, create another path? The answer is simple. Because by the time they realize the truth, their life is already structured around the system. They have financial obligations. They have relationships. They have people depending on them. And stepping away means putting all of that at risk. So instead, they adapt. They cope. They convince themselves that it's not that bad. They distract themselves. They upgrade small things. They take vacations. They buy new experiences. But deep down, they know nothing fundamental has changed. And this is why most men never escape. Not because they're incapable, but because the system is designed to become harder to leave the longer you stay in it. It slowly removes your flexibility. It replaces it with responsibility. And responsibility makes risk feel dangerous. But there's a small percentage of men who do manage to break out. And when you look at them closely, they're not playing the same game. They don't rely entirely on trading time for money. They build leverage. They develop skills that scale. They create assets that produce value without constant effort. They use the same system, but they interact with it differently. Instead of being consumed by it, they position themselves to benefit from it. And that shift is everything. Because once you stop thinking in terms of hours worked and start thinking in terms of systems built, your entire trajectory changes. You're no longer tied directly to your time. You're no longer capped by your schedule. You no longer depend on showing up just to survive. But making that shift requires awareness. It requires stepping back and seeing the structure clearly. Because if you don't see the system, you can't escape it. The truth is, the system isn't broken. It's not failing. It's working exactly as it was designed to work. It creates stability. It creates productivity. It keeps everything moving, but it doesn't prioritize your freedom. And once you understand that, everything changes. Because now you have a choice. You can continue playing the game exactly as it's laid out, or you can start questioning the rules. You can start thinking differently. You can start building something outside of it, even if it begins small. Because escaping the system doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually, through small decisions, through new skills, through building things that exist beyond your time. Most men won't do that, not because they can't, but because they never fully see the system they're in. But now you do. So the only question left is, what are you going to do about it?